because it's so easy. You always do this and you're so frustrating and I can't stand it when you do that. Don't do that. Just avoid. It's tempting to do that, but don't do that, because then that puts them on the defensive. Well, we are back in the kitchen with our kitchen couples, Mike and Diane, and Eric and Kara, and Dan and Danielle. And guys, this is not the first show we've talked about conflict
Not at
during,
all.
because I think it's such an important topic when you're trying to become a better us. Let's face it.
And I like how Bill and Pam in their teaching there, they said it's really important to establish these rules of engagement ahead of time. Because when you're in the heat of the emotional conflict, you could say and do things that if ahead of time you've said, here are the things we won't say and do when we're entering into a conflict, then it really helps to set those ground rules that you can follow along and keep each other accountable to.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the thoughts you guys had with this teaching?
Yeah, well, okay, we'll admit we have not ever made a conflict covenant, but Bill and Pam, you are inspiring us to do so. I just love them. Lots of things I love about Bill and Pam, but one thing I noticed when they were talking was their conflict resolution involved humility. I noticed that both Pam and Bill had a moment where they said, okay, God, if there's something with me that needs to be changed, then work on me first. They both came to that conclusion, and the result was an actual conflict resolution. So I think that's definitely an important key. And then I also loved, it was really freeing for me when Bill kind of said, okay, as far as finishing a conversation or, coming to a resolution, it doesn't mean that you have a solution, but that might not get there. We might not get there in one sitting, but we have to be okay with each other and find a way to move on and have resolution between us emotionally, even if we don't totally solve the problem.
Pam ended, I think, by saying, and make your conflict work for you. And the idea that a conflict actually can work for you, that's actually beneficial to work out some of these things. And I think the idea of the conflict, it's kind of like a fence or an umbrella, something that draws the boundaries. We've had other shows talking about boundaries too, and how boundaries actually give us freedom. That we can talk about these things, but neither of us, we feel safe because we're going to stay within those fences, and no one's going to go wild and crazy and to start talking about, divorce or I never should have married you or whatever, these things that we've said. No, there's a fence here, there's a boundary, and we're going to respect each other and stay within those boundaries. And then I think then you're in a safe place where you can make that conflict work for you, and you can actually have a constructive conflict.
Yeah, I loved how they said that you marry what you don't have. So like there are differences between you, and of course when there are differences between you, they're going to come up sometimes in negative ways. And so I also really loved what they said about how an argument within the marriage should be two people searching for love again, searching for the love in the love you have for them, as opposed to beat them down, kind of build them up and find the love that you first fell in love with them.
I think too, with having a covenant and kind of creating those boundaries, it helps with like putting your ego and your pride to the side, because you're not trying to one up each other. You already know the parameters of this, and then you work together for a goal, and it's kind of trying to gain something instead of trying to beat each other down.
Well, no, we've never made a conflict covenant either. But I do know, my husband has this saying, he loves to say, it's not how you go through, but how you grow through. And I think it's very important as couples that we remember whenever we get into an argument that we learn something from it. We take something positive from it so that we can grow and become better together.
I tell you, she does make me better, obvious, and I really this whole idea of conflict can be so disruptive. It can be so harsh, and sometimes it can be so innocent. Like one of the things that as you see me talk, you see how my hands are going and what's happening right there. I am passionate, and so when I talk, sometimes it's she doesn't disagree with what I'm saying. It's how I say it, because I'm talking with my hands, and so I have to learn. And so know this, that we're on a continuous cycle. Trying to learn and understand, and God has made marriage in this way, I think, in a special way, so we don't get stale. So we never get there. So it's consistently evolving, and so don't be discouraged if you're having the challenge. But having this kind of process, putting rules in place, gives you boundaries, and it really prepares a foundation for you. So let's all move forward in a productive way together.
That's good. That's good. Now, like you guys, we had never made a conflict covenant, but we did have kind of like understood rules in place for when we do have disagreements or arguments. So maybe that is a conflict. I don't know. We never named it that.
It always helps though to put it down and agree upon it.
Yeah. So some of the things that we've kind of had in our relationship over the years is we don't yell at each other. You just don't yell. And if you're tempted to yell and your voice kind of raises, we kind of bring it down. We say that to each other, just bring the tone down. Another thing is we keep our emotions under control, and we may have to kind of walk away from each other for a couple of minutes just to kind of take a deep breath. And so that when we come back together to talk about it, we're more calm. And then we don't attack each other. Because it's so easy, you always do this and you're so frustrating and I can't stand it when you do that. Don't do that. Just avoid. It's tempting to do that, but don't do that, because then that puts them on the defensive, and that's not going to solve anything.
And one kind of unwritten rule we always had when the kids were young is don't argue or have your conflict in front of the kids.
Yeah.
Go behind the closed doors, because it really affects them in a negative way for sure.
I mean,
if they see
it's
that.
one thing for them to discover how to resolve conflict, and hopefully you live that out too in front of them. But when you have something that's really disruptive between the two of you, we always would try to do that behind closed doors. So I think we're out of time.
We are. We got to move on. I'll just add put prayer into the mix as well, because it's
that's a
hard.
good
It's
one.
hard to stay mad at someone that you're praying with and for.
That's the
All
best
right?
way to end this segment. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for
Thanks,
joining us from
guys.
your kitchens. Okay.
Stay with us. There's more Better Us to come. All right.